Some Things Never Change by My Lost and Found. Read by My Lost and Found. Chapter 2. What kind of person owns a bank vault? Summary. It wasn't too odd for Toshinori to wake up somewhere he didn't remember falling asleep. Being quirkless, it was just something that happened every few months. Still, it was definitely odd to wake up in a bank vault. Toshinori had woken up in a bed. Problem was, it was not his bed. Waking up somewhere he didn't fall asleep wasn't all too unusual. He did get kidnapped a lot. But waking up in a bed was definitely weird. Sure, it wasn't a very nice bed, but it was a bed nonetheless. Last thing he remembered was leaving the gym after training. If he was going to inherit One for All, he was going to need to bulk up. As Nana said, he looked like a stick bug. He swears he heard a faint voice yell, "Get stick bugged," after she said that, but Nana hadn't heard anything. Whatever group or individual that kidnapped him this time was a little odd. The bed was weird enough, but the sparsely furnished room with no windows that appeared to be made out of solid metal was weirder. Even weirder still was the door. It kind of looked like the inside of a bank vault. Who kept their kidnappees inside bank vaults set up like bedrooms? There were even some old comic books on shelves, as well as a lava lamp. Toshinori didn't even realize those were still a thing outside of pre-Quirk movies. Well, no matter, because he wasn't planning on staying long. He didn't see any cameras in the room, so he began studying the perimeter. The vault door was completely smooth on this side. Out of everything in the room, it looked especially reinforced. There was definitely no way to get through that. Not that it mattered. In his experience, many kidnappers fall into this same fallacy, the impenetrable door fallacy. More often than not, kidnappers focus their attention on the entrance or exit they use to get around. So they forget there are other ways. Ways which are very useful to get out. And sometimes, when there really isn't a way out, you just have to make your own. You'd be surprised how easy drywall is to get through when you're dedicated and have access to a chair. Though, the thick steel walls here didn't look like they'd go as easy, despite the plethora of items he had at his disposal. So, pre-existing exit it is. It didn't take long to find an air vent, hidden up in the top corner of the bedroom, behind some stuffed animals. For most people, it would be too tight of a fit. Thanks to his stickbug-esque physique, it wouldn't be too hard for him to slip through after he got it open. How would he get the screws off? The loose change he had in his pockets, of course. It was surprisingly useful yet inconspicuous of a tool to have. He would somehow have to scale the veritable stuffy mountain to reach the vent, but he'd manage. Before he could start the climb, however, he heard the vault door being unlocked. Without hesitation, Toshinori slipped back into the bed and pretended to be unconscious. Hopefully, he was right about there not being cameras, because he would prefer whoever had kidnapped him not to know he was awake yet. It always made things more inconvenient. He listened intently to the sound of whoever had entered the room. Their shoes clicked loudly on the cold stone floor. Even though he had his eyes closed and face buried in the blanket, he could feel the power coming off of whoever this was. Nope. Bad vibes. No thanks. He definitely had to get out of here. ASAP. Still asleep, the man smirked, his voice deep and commanding. So frail and small. It took everything in Toshinori not to flinch when he felt a hand brush against his hair. Hands off, creep! Even Yochi's successors are weak and quirkless like him. What was this crazy man talking about? Most of his kidnappers were nowhere near as weird as this. First the vault, and now the hair petting and talking to themselves. No thanks. This was almost as weird as the cult that kidnapped him. And those weirdos had taken him twice, so It was a hard bar to reach. "Well," the kidnapper hummed, retracting the hand from his head. "We'll meet properly when you wake up, 8th. Toshinori waited another 15 minutes after the man left before he peeled his eyes open. He really didn't want to get caught awake with that guy in the room. But now he was sure that the man was gone and not coming back. He was not waiting any longer to escape. His first obstacle, the stuffy mound. Normally, he would just drag over a chair or something, but for whatever reason, everything was bolted down. He even tried the lava lamp, but that was bolted down too. That creepy guy was weirder than he thought. Thankfully, he was not only lanky, but he was tall as well. After some creative pillow stacking, he was able to reach high enough to unscrew the vent. He wasn't the most prepared person, but he really was glad he had taken up keeping things like coins in his pockets. There was absolutely nothing in here that could have been used to unscrew them otherwise. Everything hard was bolted down, and all the corners were rounded. There wasn't anything vaguely sharp in here. Whoever made this vault had built it so whoever was in here couldn't hurt themselves or anyone else. Even the thin bed sheets were attached firmly to the bed. If the vibes felt bad before, they were worse now. The vents were dusty and not very nice. It seemed that they hadn't been used in a while, which hopefully meant he was the first one to be kept in the vault in a while. Toshinori didn't like vent travel. It was definitely his least favorite method of travel, but he definitely did not want to run into anyone on his way out. So, the vents it was. He crawled and crawled through the maze of vents, checking the vent openings when the coast was clear. After scouring the floor he was on, he eventually realized that he was in a basement, so up the vents he went. Eventually, he saw the soft glow of daylight spilling onto the floor below the vent. Slipping out of the vent as quietly as he could, he was thankful to see the room was empty of all people. It looked like an abandoned office room. All the tables were covered with dust, and there weren't even lights in the sockets. Weird, but okay. Not exactly the classic villain base. There wasn't much to look at, and Toshinori wasn't exactly keen on sticking around. The windows didn't exactly open, though. His eyes landed on one of the many office chairs. One new door later, and he was booking it off into the streets with shards of glass in his hair. He got home with no problem. After messaging his mentor to apologize for not responding to her texts, he flopped onto his own bed. He was not a fan of whoever had kidnapped him. He'd need to be extra vigilant until he got One for All to make sure that creep didn't go for round 2 like the cult had. Fucking weirdo. All for One's plan was coming together perfectly. He'd captured the current holder of One for All's protege right from under her nose. The blonde teen was trapped in his vault, still asleep from the drugs his minions had used. There were so many things All for One could do with this. He would of course first try to use the boy's life as a bargaining chip for the 7th to hand over One for All, but that never seemed to work. After that, there were endless possibilities. He could try and turn the young boy to his side. He's sure that there's some sort of memory quirk out there he could use to wipe the slate. Maybe he would just kill the boy right in front of her. After some torture, perhaps? He was more excited than he had been in decades. He'd gone to see if the boy was awake not too long ago. Unfortunately, he was still sound asleep in Yochi's old bed. He'd looked so small and frail that it was impossible not to think of his quirkless younger brother. The vault had come in handy, after all. It had been about half an hour since he'd last checked, so All for One figured enough time had passed that it wouldn't be weird to check again. Even if he was excited, he had an evil reputation to keep up for his minions. He swiftly opened the many locks to the vault, the heavy door swinging open to reveal nothing. The room was empty of all gangly teenage boy successors. "What the fuck?" he shouted in part confusion, part anger. How did this happen? The vault was completely inescapable. The heroes must have caught on sooner than he expected and sent some covert team to rescue the boy. He didn't think that the 7th had the resources or the connections, but that was the only explanation. His vault was inescapable. Damn those special operatives. Like a mentor, like successor. Definitely not just quirkless people being good at escaping kidnappings. No. Special operatives. My absolute fucking favorite part of this is just Yoshi in the void yelling, "Get stick bugged!" to All Might. Because he is Gen Z. You cannot change my mind. Like, I don't care when the actual, like, first generation of Quirks is. He is Gen Z. That is just, again, fact. You can't take that away from me. I can't explain how much I love that. Yeah, so this one is like really, I just love this idea of like All for One being like, oh, my master plan, I've kidnapped the successor, ooh, da, da, da. And just Yagi being like, fucking weirdo, like, I don't think he ever realizes that it was All for One that kidnapped him as a teenager. He's just got this memory of, fucking weirdo who had a bank vault and shit, and he just hasn't connected it yet. But no, like, imagine in the future he's just like, wait, that was you creepy fuck. Yeah. But I really love the idea that All for One, before he like went underground, just had a bunch of minions. Like, oh yes, minion, do that. Minion, do that. Like, classic evil villain style. But, he had to go into secrecy and shit. So he lost all his minions except for the doctor and like Gigantomachia, and that is so sad for him, and also those poor unemployed criminals. How dare? Honestly, how dare? They had jobs taken away from them because All Might had to go lobotomize the potato. So sad. So sad. Too bad he got better. Anyway, yeah, so as I've said before, like, this is like chapter 2 of question mark for this, because I'm sure I'll come up with more ideas in the future, but the last 2 parts in the series so far are just kind of collections of random stories instead of like actual like multi-chapter kind of like stories. So yeah, just 2 kind of unrelated but like the thread of All Might. That's what these are. Next time, childhood stories. It's great. It's so fun. I really like the 3rd chapter that I wrote recently. It's very fun. And I'm writing like the next one that I'm gonna post, but again, school is kicking my fucking ass. I need to be studying way more. I forgot how bad I am at tests. So yeah, I really hope I can keep with my upload schedule. But, of course, I love doing this. I know you guys love listening to this, but, education and real life comes first, yada, yada, yada. Huh. So sad. So sad. Yeah, well, I guess I will see you guys next time. Get stick.